There is a moment in faith when God stops giving you answers. You pray, you wait, you ask Him to show you what is coming next, but nothing becomes clear. The door ahead remains closed. The path feels uncertain, and somehow God seems to be asking you to move forward anyway. Not because you know where you're going, but because you know who is leading you. Maybe that's where you are right now. You have been asking God, Lord, what is going to happen? Where is this going? Why hasn't my situation changed? Why can't you just show me the outcome? You want clarity. You want confirmation. You want to know that the decision you're making today will lead somewhere good tomorrow. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with wanting answers. We are human. We naturally want certainty. We want to know what is waiting around the corner before we take the next step. But sometimes, God allows you to stand in a place where certainty is impossible. Not because He wants to confuse you, not because He has abandoned you, but because He is developing something inside you that certainty could never develop. Trust. Think about it. If you knew exactly how everything would work out, would you really need faith? If you knew every detail of your future, would you still need to depend on God? Sometimes God doesn't reveal the entire road because He wants you to learn how to walk with Him, not just how to reach a destination. There is a difference. We often ask God for a map, but God may give us a relationship. We ask, show me where this is going. And God may be saying, stay close to me. We ask, tell me what happens next. And He may answer, trust me with the next step. That can be frustrating, especially when you feel like you've been waiting for a long time. You may look around and think, everyone else seems to know what they're doing. Why am I still uncertain? Why does my life feel like one unanswered question after another? But don't confuse uncertainty with God's absence. Just because you cannot see what God is doing doesn't mean God isn't doing anything. There are seasons where God gives you revelation, and there are seasons where He gives you dependence. Both are part of spiritual growth. Sometimes you don't need another sign. You need deeper trust. Sometimes you don't need another explanation. You need the courage to keep walking. Think about Abraham. God called him to leave what was familiar and move toward something God had promised. But Abraham wasn't handed a complete blueprint of his future. He had to move forward without knowing every detail. That is what makes his faith so powerful. He didn't have the whole picture. He had God's direction. And perhaps God is teaching you the same lesson right now. You may not know where the relationship is going. You may not know how the opportunity will turn out. You may not know when the prayer will be answered. You may not know what the next year will look like. But maybe you don't need to know yet. Maybe all you need is enough faith for the next step. Imagine standing outside at night. You cannot see miles ahead. You can only see a small distance in front of you. But that small amount of light is enough to take another step, then another, and eventually you realize something. You were never expected to see the entire road at once. You were only expected to keep walking. That's what trust looks like. Not knowing everything, but refusing to stop because you don't know everything. Not having every answer, but still choosing obedience. Not seeing the ending, but believing that God sees it. So if you're in a season where nothing seems certain, don't rush to create an answer just because silence makes you uncomfortable. Don't force a door simply because waiting feels painful. Don't make permanent decisions simply to escape temporary uncertainty. Slow down, pray, listen, and ask God a different question. Instead of, God, show me exactly how this will end, try asking, God, what are you asking me to do today? Because the future belongs to God. But today is where you can be faithful. You don't have to carry tomorrow. You don't have to solve your entire life tonight. You don't have to understand every chapter before you turn the page. Sometimes God is teaching you to trust Him without knowing the outcome. And that may be exactly where your faith becomes real. Because faith is not knowing everything will happen the way you want. Faith is knowing that whatever happens, God will still be God, and you will still have a reason to trust Him. So take the next step, not because you can see the destination, but because you trust the one who can. And maybe that's the lesson God has been trying to teach you all along. There are seasons in life when you do everything you know to do. You pray, you stay patient, you try to make the right choices, and still, nothing seems to change. The answer doesn't come, the door doesn't open, the situation doesn't move, and after a while, you start wondering if God heard you at all. Maybe you've experienced that. You prayed for something with your whole heart. You believed, you waited, but instead of receiving the answer you expected, you received silence. And silence can be difficult because when you don't know what God is doing, your mind starts creating its own explanations. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe God said no. Maybe I missed my opportunity. Maybe nothing is ever going to change. But be careful, because uncertainty can make you believe things God never said. A delay is not automatically a rejection. A closed door is not automatically punishment. And a quiet season is not automatically abandonment. Sometimes you simply don't have enough information to understand what God is doing. Think about Joseph. His life didn't unfold in a straight line. There were moments when his circumstances looked completely disconnected from the future God had for him. If Joseph had judged God's plan by one difficult chapter, he could have concluded that everything had gone wrong. But the chapter wasn't the whole story. That's important for you to remember, because you may be looking at your life the same way. You're judging the entire story by what is happening right now. You're saying, this can't possibly be good. This isn't what I prayed for. This isn't where I thought I'd be. And maybe you're right. Maybe it isn't what you wanted. But that doesn't mean God has finished writing. You are looking at one page while God sees the entire book. And there are things you cannot understand from your current position. A door may close, and you may never immediately understand why. A person may leave, and you may spend months wondering what happened. An opportunity may disappear, and you may think you lost something that was meant for you. But sometimes, God's protection doesn't feel like protection while you're experiencing it. Sometimes, what feels like loss is actually redirection. And sometimes, the hardest thing God asks you to do is let go of your preferred outcome. Because there is a difference between trusting God and trusting God only when He agrees with your plan. Real surrender begins when you can say, God, I wanted this. I prayed for this. I imagined my life with this. But I trust you enough to release it if you know something I don't. That's not weakness. That's spiritual maturity. You stop trying to negotiate with God. You stop saying, God, I'll trust you, but only if you give me the ending I want. Instead, your prayer becomes, God, I don't know what the ending will be, but I know I don't want to walk through it without you. That changes everything, because when you surrender the outcome, you stop living in constant fear of losing control. You can finally breathe. You can finally say, I don't know what's going to happen, but I don't have to know tonight. There is peace in that. Not the kind of peace that comes because every problem disappeared, a deeper peace. The kind that exists while the problem is still there. Jesus taught his followers not to live consumed by tomorrow, because tomorrow has not arrived yet. And when you spend all of your energy trying to solve a future that hasn't happened, you miss the grace God has already given you for today. Think about how often anxiety asks, what if? What if this fails? What if they leave? What if the opportunity doesn't come? What if my prayer isn't answered? What if my future doesn't look the way I imagined? Faith doesn't always answer every what if. Sometimes faith simply says, if that happens, God will still be with me. That's powerful, because now your peace is no longer attached to a specific outcome. You don't need everything to go according to your plan, to believe that your life is still in God's hands. You don't need every person to stay to know that God can still guide you. You don't need every prayer to be answered immediately to know that God still hears you. And you don't need to understand the season to be faithful inside it. So maybe stop asking, why isn't God doing something? And start asking, what is God developing in me while I wait? Maybe he's developing patience, maybe discernment, maybe courage, maybe humility, maybe deeper prayer. Maybe he's teaching you that your identity cannot depend on circumstances, because there are lessons you can only learn when you don't have control. You learn how to wait. You learn how to listen. You learn how to surrender. And eventually, you learn that God's presence is more valuable than God's explanations. You don't always need to know why. Sometimes, you simply need to know that you're not walking alone. So if your life feels uncertain right now, don't make panic your prophet. Don't let fear tell you what your future will be. Don't let one difficult season convince you that the entire story is broken. You are still in the middle of the story, and the middle can be confusing, but confusion does not mean hopeless. Waiting does not mean forgotten, and uncertainty does not mean God has left. You may not understand what he's doing today. That's okay. You don't have to. Keep your heart open. Keep praying. Keep doing what is right. And let God handle the part of the story that you cannot see. Because sometimes the greatest act of faith isn't believing that God will give you the outcome you want. It's believing that God is still worthy of your trust, even before you know what the outcome will be. There comes a point where you have to stop asking, God, when will everything finally make sense? And start asking, God, can I trust you even when it doesn't? Because there will always be something you don't know, something you cannot predict, something you cannot control. And if your peace depends on having all the answers, you will spend your life waiting for peace to arrive. But God offers something different, a peace that doesn't require perfect circumstances, a peace that can exist while you're still waiting, while you're still healing, while you're still praying, while you're still wondering what comes next. That's a different kind of faith. It's not the faith that says, everything will happen exactly the way I want. It's the faith that says, whatever happens, I will not let uncertainty pull me away from God. Think about what happens when you stop trying to control the ending. You begin to live differently. You stop obsessing over every possibility. You stop replaying every conversation. You stop trying to predict every person's next move. You stop demanding that tomorrow explain itself today. And slowly, you begin to breathe again because you realize your job was never to control the entire story. Your job was to remain faithful in the chapter you're living. Maybe that's why God hasn't shown you everything yet, because knowing everything isn't always what you need. Becoming the person who can trust Him may be what you need. Think about that. Maybe this season isn't only about what God is going to give you. Maybe it's about who you are becoming while you wait for it. You may be becoming more patient, more discerning, more courageous, more surrendered, more aware of God's presence. You may be learning how to make decisions without fear, how to wait without losing hope, how to pray without demanding a timeline, how to love without controlling, how to move forward without guarantees. And those lessons will stay with you long after the season ends, because circumstances change, people change, plans change, opportunities come and go. But the character built through faith can become part of who you are. That's why your current uncertainty doesn't have to be wasted. You can use this season to grow closer to God. Instead of constantly asking, when will this end? Ask, Lord, what do you want to teach me here? Instead of saying, why isn't my life moving? Ask, what can I be faithful with today? Instead of demanding, show me the whole future, say, give me wisdom for the next decision. That prayer is powerful because it brings you back to what you can actually do. You can pray today. You can forgive today. You can make the right choice today. You can walk away from what you know is wrong today. You can encourage someone today. You can be patient today. You can trust God today. You don't need tomorrow's strength for today's assignment. God gives grace for the moment you're actually living. So stop carrying a future that hasn't been placed in your hands. There is a reason you were not created to know everything. You were created to trust, and maybe that's the deeper lesson behind this entire season. God isn't necessarily trying to make you certain. He's teaching you to become secure in Him, even when life isn't certain. That is freedom. Because once you understand that, a closed door cannot destroy you. A delay cannot define you. An unanswered prayer cannot erase your faith. And an unexpected outcome cannot convince you that God has lost control. You can still say, I don't understand, but I trust you. You can say, I don't see the way, but I trust you. You can say, I don't know when, but I trust you. You can say, I don't know what comes next, but I know I don't have to face it alone. That is faith. And maybe that's what God has been trying to teach you. Not how to predict your future, but how to walk into it without fear. Not how to control every outcome, but how to surrender the outcomes you cannot control. Not how to eliminate uncertainty, but how to remain anchored when uncertainty comes. So if you're standing in an unanswered season right now, take a breath. You don't have to solve everything today. You don't have to force an answer. You don't have to know exactly where this road ends. Just take the next faithful step, then another, And when tomorrow comes, take the next one. Let God handle what you cannot see. Let Him carry what you cannot carry. Let Him write what you cannot predict. Because the future is not asking you to understand it. It's asking you to enter it with faith. And one day, you may look back. You may remember the nights when you had no answers, the moments when you questioned the timing, the doors that closed, the plans that changed, the prayers that seemed unanswered. And perhaps you'll realize you were never as lost as you thought you were. God was leading you, even when you couldn't recognize the direction. And the season that once frightened you became the season that taught you how to trust. So today, release the need to know everything. Release the pressure to predict everything. Release the fear that says you must control everything. Give God your timeline. Give Him your expectations. Give Him your unanswered questions. And most importantly, give Him your trust. Because you don't need to know the outcome to trust the one who already knows it. Let that truth stay with you. When you don't know, trust Him. When you have to wait, trust Him. When the door closes, trust Him. When the answer takes longer than you expected, trust Him. And when life takes a direction you never planned, trust Him. Not because you know what will happen, but because you know who is holding your life. If this message reached you in a season where you're learning to trust God without having all the answers right, I trust you, God. Let those words be your prayer today. And if you know someone who is struggling with uncertainty, share this message with them. Sometimes a person doesn't need another prediction about their future. They simply need a reminder that they are not walking through it alone. This is Inner Light. If you want more messages about faith, purpose, spiritual growth, and finding peace in God's presence, subscribe. And remember, you don't need to know the outcome to trust the one who knows it. Your story is still unfolding. So keep walking, keep believing, keep trusting. God is not asking you to see the whole road. He's simply asking you to trust Him with the next step.